I'd like to call to order the North Aurora Village Board meeting on Monday, July 20th, 2020. We have roll call, please.
Trustee Carroll?
Here.
Trustee Curtis?
Here.
Trustee Gaffino?
Here.
Trustee Gately?
Here.
Trustee Lowry?
Here.
Trustee Martinez?
Here.
And Mayor Berman.
Here. All right, we'll start with our silent prayer and meditation. All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the
to the
flag
United States of America
and to the republic for
which
which
it
stands
one nation
under
God,
indivisible, with liberty and
justice for all.
Any audience comments?
I do not see any, Mr. Berman.
Pardon?
I do not see any, Mr. Mayor.
You don't see me?
I don't see any audience comments.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Trustee comments. Consent agenda.
Motion to approve. Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Trustee Carroll?
Yes.
Trustee Curtis?
Yes.
Trustee Gaffino?
Yes.
Trustee Gately?
Yes.
Trustee Lowry?
Yes.
Trustee Martinez?
Yes.
All right, we have one item of new business.
Okay,
Mr. Bosco?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number one is a request for a special event for food trucks. As the board is aware, the neighborhood of Tanner Trails, Randy Smith, who is one of the petitioners tonight, along with Natalie Reimer Tissel, they are petitioning to have an event that they've had a few weeks already, but in this case, what happened is they want the event to go longer. So in order to have a 3-hour food truck by our current code, you have to have a special event permit. So if it's 2 hours or less, they don't need a permit. But because they want to keep this going and they want it to be 3 hours, they have to have a permit. So before you tonight is a special event request to use the parking lot at the High Point Church from 5 to 8 p.m. on the dates that are shown there. That'll be the 25th, the 29th, and August 4th. It says more to be named later, but we have a discussion tonight on COW regarding food trucks that may or may not make later dates needed for a permit or not. So with that being said, once again, this is for the special event permit. And I do want to point out in the memo, it said that we were waiting on written permission from the church. We did receive an email forwarded to us today saying that the church was okay having the event at their parking lot.
I have a question with that, Steve. I know we haven't taken the vote yet. And I would make a motion to approve so we can have a discussion.
Second.
Now, I guess my concern would be, I mean, the churches aren't even open to hold traditional services. How are we going to be congruent in our logic by allowing them to hold an event like this, you know, on 3 different occasions?
This event has been going on pretty much every weekend for the past 4 or 5 weeks. It's in the parking lot outside, so it's outdoors.
Right, but how are we even able to allow an event where we're going to have, you know, maybe more than 50 people when we've got guidelines in place right now, which are not supposed to allow large crowds to gather.
That's correct. So the general idea is that when they have the food trucks out there, that people are to go there, pick up food. They can hang around for a while if they want, or they can just go home. I've not been there, so I don't know if they're getting crowds of more than 50 at a time. I know that when we first talked to them about a month or two ago, their intent was to keep everybody social distance and spread out.
Well, I can tell you that I live 2 doors down from the church, and they have pretty good crowds. I don't see anybody wearing masks or following CDC guidelines. The other concern I have is in the one food truck that had already occurred, they were selling alcohol. And they advertised it on the Tanner Trails Facebook page, which they can't be doing. So I think if the petitioners we need to have assurance that that's not going to happen again, and that the time limits are specific, and they have to cut off the time at 8 o'clock. It is a residential neighborhood. And there are 6 houses that are adjacent to the church that there's a pretty big disruption, mine being one of them. The other issue I have is on this application, don't we require separate special event permits for each event?
No, we checked with our village attorney. You're allowed to have a special event permit that stretches over multiple events.
I would like to propose that we do these individually, just because, at some degree, this is a public health issue. And I'd like to do them separately, because if we do see problems with the first event, we can, course correct or help them implement a strategy to stay within the health guidelines. I don't want to give a blanket okay on this, and then all of a sudden we have a hot spot in Tanner Trails.
Yeah, so with this, the reason that we allow multiple dates, I would assume, is because the board has to approve special event permits, and therefore the board only meets every 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the calendar. So in this case, for instance, if you wanted to do it weekly, you'd only be approving one date on this, and then the next meeting, I'm not even sure if our next meeting is before August 4th after this. So
as a general proposition, we would not be in good standing to pick and choose among who can apply for a multi-day event and who can't. That would be problematic.
But we could require everybody to do separate permits, couldn't we?
Correct, but we couldn't choose among people. We'd have to have all one or all the other.
So right now, as we had this discussion a few weeks ago, the current code specifically to food trucks allows food trucks for 2 hours on any private property right now as we speak, without needing any permit of any type. Then in addition to that, one of the reasons we wanted to amend the code, which is on the committee of the whole agenda tonight, is because trailers were never directly addressed in the code. And so, call it a loophole or whatnot, but trailers are not specifically mentioned as food trucks. That was one of the things that we proposed to add in the code in our review tonight. So technically speaking, anyone can have a food truck right now on private property. If they cut the hours to 5 to 7, they wouldn't need village approval.
Well, I received correspondence from the resident who was at our last meeting and complained. She's still holding her objection. And apparently the last food truck, she states that further, I reported their last 3-hour food truck event to code enforcement, and I didn't see evidence of any enforcement. And I do recall that this is the first time a special use permit has been applied for. They did fall under the food truck allowance, but they did go over by an hour. So, I mean, they've already sold alcohol and they've gone over by an hour. I think we need assurance that they're going to comply with the requirements set forth in the village code.
So, and I know Chief Fisher's on the meeting. So when it comes to enforcement of food truck regulations, it actually falls under the police department. And when we did that, we specifically did it that way 4 years ago because code officers aren't here, obviously, on weekends or at night times most of the time. So in theory, the police department would be the one that would, if there was an issue or if they went long, and you know, don't want to make the police the bad guy to go out there, but they would be the department that would go out there to verify that they were shutting down.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can I, Steve?
Yeah.
So what happens if they are caught selling alcohol and they don't have the proper, you know, they're not
It's
supposed
fine.
Okay.
And then can we revoke the special permit?
Yes. I think,
Okay.
I think we need to converse with them and say that, hey, there's no alcohol to be sold, even though they should know that. The only way you can sell alcohol, you have to have a license in the city of North Aurora, Village of North Aurora. If they don't have that, there's certainly they can't.
Which is really easy because in the case of the liquor they had the one night, it was from a business in a different town that actually has a liquor license. All they needed was a $50 permit from the village to sell liquor here.
Not, well,
Hey, Trustee Carroll, you said there was a lot of
Oh.
disruption. Describe what was all the disruption and kind of fill us in on that?
Well, there was no social distancing at all, but I
meant a disruption to the
disruption was
neighborhood.
they had music for 3 hours, very loud music for 3 hours, which was beyond the 2 hours. I saw
Well,
the memo that says
I
they're allowed.
think can't we play music in our own? I don't think they're. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought you could have music up to 10 o'clock at your own house. So I don't think music is part of this anyway. But you're talking about like from a.
Well, if it carries for a block, then I think you've got a possible disturbance.
Was it carrying a block or just 2 houses to your house or?
Well, no, it could be heard, I would assume, from the fire station. I mean, if you were outside, you could hear the music.
How was the traffic then?
Well, I would say a good 60 or 70% was foot traffic.
Did the rest of them park in the church lot or were they parked on the street?
Yeah, they were parked in the church lot.
How many people that you think were there, Mark? Over 50?
I think at the prime, yeah, there was probably over 50.
How about trash? Was there any messes out
I
along
didn't see any trash. Like I didn't notice any increased trash in my yard or in any of my neighbor's yard.
do they have tables for them to sit there and eat, or what's the?
I don't know if they did the second time. I know they did the first time.
Did they?
They had set up picnic tables and I think they tried to social distance, but the crowd all came in at the same time.
Well, as far as enforcing the social distance, that's very difficult. There's no reason though why we can't remind them and make sure that they have signage that says they should keep a social distance and wear masks. I still say, but
Yeah, I agree, Dale. I think there should be some type of at least warning or sign that says wear your mask and social distance. What if they have 200 people there and somebody gets sick and, it spreads around our town? So,
Well, can we require that as part of the permit, a condition that they enforce the CDC guidelines as it relates to restaurant
sure
or
it's
the
not spelled
Illinois?
out. No,
Huh?
it's not spelled out.
We could make it a condition of the permit.
Oh, certainly.
I mean, just like I'm just thinking like some type of sign that says, wear your mask and social distance and 50 people. That's kind of what the limits are, right? And then I don't know if the music, and it goes on for 3 hours and it's real loud. Is that allowed, Steve?
Yeah, so under our current code, you can have a DJ, you can have amplification of music, as Trustee Capino said, as long as it's not beyond a certain time of day. On Saturdays, it's 10 p.m. So in theory, the way that would work is if someone was being obnoxious with the music, it was super loud and disturbing the neighborhood, it would be treated as a normal police complaint for a noise complaint.
Okay, so I guess my concerns are the crowd size, social distancing, and mask wearing. That's my concern.
Well, certainly no,
It's the question of why are we allowing an event in the middle of a pandemic? We've canceled all our other events. So what's next? Now, what if we get petitions for block parties or other events?
you know, we've spent more time on this. And we've discussed it at our staff meetings. I know staff has worked and had multiple meetings on it. We've talked about it, and as far as I'm concerned, we got to move to the point of it's either got to be a special occasion and there's no trucks otherwise.
I would not want to do that. I would not want to.
Well, I would just like to point out that we don't even get, 8 or 9 people together as the board, but yet we're going to allow a couple hundred people to go get together in a parking lot. I'm just trying to make sure that we're being consistent in our logic. Believe me, I'm all for I'm not a big supporter of the whole social distancing, and I believe we need to do it. We have to be able to do it, but I would love to be able to say we should have had North Aurora days and we should have had everything else. But now to say, okay, we're going to allow this, but not some of the other things that we've canceled. I just want to make sure that our logic and that we're being consistent across the board. If we're going to say we want to protect our residents, but then we're, pick and choosing, I just can't see how that's consistent in what we're doing.
I don't think any of us thought it was going to be something that they were going to congregate there. I think the idea was that it's a food truck, they're going to come and buy their food and they're going to leave.
What's the purpose of live music other than to create a festive environment to get people to stay?
I think the alcohol went along with that, and obviously there can't be any more alcohol.
So who's going to enforce that? Since Bosco said our code enforcement isn't working on the weekend, what are we doing there then?
It's our police department.
So are they going to show up and check every so often, or is it going to be based on a complaint, or he said, she said, or?
If I could just speak real quick, the difficult part about it is who's to say we don't get busy? Today we had a fatal accident that took every single one of my units, and that thing could be on its 3rd or 4th hour. How am I supposed to know? And I'm not pushing it off on anybody else or anything like that. Yes, the code does fall under the police department, and when it's just a regular permit, I have to sign off on those. But it is just one of those things that is potentially difficult to enforce. So I don't want to make a blanket statement and say that we will in fact enforce every single ordinance or law that comes down pertaining to food trucks. It's difficult to enforce. In other words, it's not hard and steadfast.
Well, my viewpoint on this is I would probably rule on granting the permit, make certain stipulations to them and observations, and let them know that it is a difficult time and a sensitive time as a result of everything that's going on. And even with that, they're giving the opportunity as long as these things can be followed up. And if for some reason there is not such a thing, the permit will be revoked. And just give them the one-time opportunity to make things right and honor their word. That would be my opinion.
Well, I'd like to be on record saying I think it's a great idea. It's a great event, but I just want to make sure that we're just, not arbitrarily allowing certain events and canceling others. I think we need to have a consistent approach due to the circumstances of the pandemic.
It's not that we're allowing as much as people are taking advantage of the situation. They all, I think I would be willing to bet they all know better, but they're not willing to conform to what's going on worldwide. So I guess we need some kind of enforcement. It's only, one night? I'll show up. I'll show up.
My concern is that this isn't going to be the only one. They're permitting for 3, and now what's going to happen when Fox Valley Country Club wants to have one, and Danbury Ridge and Columbia Circle? Are we going to let the floodgates open up and allow anyone who petitions for this event to allow it to happen?
Well, now this is one issue. We're going to discuss it at our cow meeting. As far as future activities might go, so.
I'd like to make a comment. I'd like to make a comment about what I've been listening to. First of all, it's my understanding that what we're approving with this special permit is 1 extra hour, correct? So whether they
confuse it to a special use.
Excuse me, whether they comply with the standards, health standards that are dictated by the state and the CDC is one thing, and whether we should give them an extra hour, I think, is another thing. So I say that we vote on whether we should give them the extra hour to do that, and those other stipulations to wear masks and keep social distancing and maybe even monitor the music might be all part of that, the stipulations involved with the permit. But really, what we're really doing is just they're asking for 1 extra hour. Should we give them an extra hour? If we don't, could they then just come back next week for 2 hours and do exactly the same thing?
They don't need a that's what I was explaining in the beginning. They don't need a permit to have a 2-hour event. Right now, under our code, they can literally have a truck show up for 2 hours without a permit.
So what we're voting on is just an extra hour, correct? Is that?
The only reason it's here tonight is because they want the extra hour, correct?
Well, I say we call for the vote and see what happens.
Well, we have. All right. Discussion's over. But just the motion was to approve the special event for a permit for an additional hour, basically. Is that true, Mr. Bosco?
That's correct. They're looking for the extra hour because they want 3 hours.
All right. Then I'd like the call the roll, please.
Trustee Carroll.
No.
Trustee Curtis.
No.
Trustee Gaffino.
Yes.
Trustee Gately.
I'm muting.
Trustee Gately's got his, he's muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm yes.
Trustee Lowry.
Yes.
Trustee Martinez.
Yes.
Okay.
What was the vote?
4 yeses and 2 nos.
All right. All right. I have no old business. I guess as village president, my only comment is, and which is one I guess I've made over and over, is that COVID-19 pandemic is not over, and it's not getting the attention it should be. So I think we're going to look forward to more discipline and more restrictions in the future. So it's really sad to see that. Any committee reports? Trustee comments? Mr. Bosco?
I have no report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Grendel?
I have no report.
Oh, for our village department's finance, Mr. Hanna.
No report tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Community development, Mr. Toth.
I hope everyone's doing well. No report.
Police Chief Fisher.
The only thing I would like to say is that since I don't see, going back to these permits, since I don't see the special events permits for something like this, if somebody from the village could just forward me the information, and then we will do our best to track the enforcement of it as far as like the hours and stuff go.
Yeah, Chief,
That's
to
it.
that point, Chief, that even in a special event, the petitioners still have to make sure that the companies are getting the food truck permits if they're not licensed in the village.
Oh, okay. That's it.
And Public Works, Mr. Laskowski.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Very good. Entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Committee of the whole meeting starts shortly.